Hello everyone, I welcome you all to Ansarkari and I hope that you all must be doing great. So let's start with today's analysis. So the topics that we'll be taking up today includes related to India and China, and then according to one survey, government must provide for more healthcare. And we see that Mohiniyattam artist Kanak Relish is no more. And then we'll be talking about that making people aware of the fundamental duties is a key challenge and which is important for safeguarding the democracy. So recently, Supreme Court it refused to stay the Election Commission order giving the Sena name to the Shinde faction. So the Chief Justice of India says that we cannot pass an order which is the effect of staying the EC order without hearing the other parties. That includes the Eknath Shinde and the Election Commission of India. So here you should be knowing about different Supreme Court judgments in the past regarding allotment of political parties' names and the symbols between like different factions. If there is a dispute between different factions over a single name or the symbol, then India remains a bright spot to contribute 15% of the global growth in 2023. And this is coming from IMF. So outpacing the global growth, and according to IMF, India is expected to grow at 6.8% in the upcoming financial year and at 6.1% in the subsequent financial year. So that is well above the estimated global growth rates. And here the figures, the Indian figures, they are on a fiscal year basis and for the world in terms of the calendar years. So you can have a look at the contribution and basically the estimates for the world growth has also been provided. So the global growth is going to be at 3.4% in 2022. So it would be at 2.9% in 2023. So we are expecting a slowdown in the coming calendar year. That is going to be 2023. And India's growth estimations has also been provided by IMF. So while digitization, it pulled out the world's fifth largest economy from the pandemic lows, prudent fiscal policy and significant financing for the capital investments provided in the next year's budget that will help in sustaining the growth momentum in India. And India's performance has been quite impressive. So for this year, we expect India to retain a high growth rate of 6.8% for the year that ends in March. So why is India a bright spot? So because one, it has done really well to turn the digitalization that has been already moving quite well into a major driver of the overcoming of the impact of the pandemic and creating opportunities for growth in the jobs. So that's why India is an important economy in the world. So here you can see the picture of the Sinthan Pass, which connects Kashmir to the Chenab Valley in the Jammu region. And you can find out more about the other passes which are located in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. So finally, we get a Delhi mayor. Again, this process was not as easy as it was thought to be, but finally we get one mayor, and so pending decisions will get a boost. And so IIFT marks the 60th anniversary with the classical music recital. So the Indian Institute of Foreign Trade organized a classical music recital by vocalist Sunanda Sharma, and the Vice Chancellor presented Ms. Sharma and the accompanying artist with these shawls. So you should be knowing about more such institutions. So Uttar Pradesh, it targets a $1 trillion economy with its biggest ever budget. So Jammu and Kashmir State Taxes Department, in collaboration with the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, it is going to hold the GST Symposium, and there is going to be on the launch of the Tax Awareness Initiative, which is named as Kartavya. So Mohiniyattam artist Kanak Rele, she's no more. So classical dance legend Kanak Rele, she passed away in Bombay, and Mohiniyattam exponent was awarded the first Guru Gopinath National Puraskaram of the government of Kerala. And so earlier, she was initiated into the male dominated world of Kathakali, and during her training, a nagging pain in her leg at the age of 10 was diagnosed as polio, but she overcame it, and that is with her dedicated dance practice. She was able to overcome polio, and in 1973, she established the Nalanda Nritya Kala Mahavidyalaya, offering undergraduate and postgraduate and PhD degrees affiliated to the Bombay University. So she's also written a book, Me and My Mohiniyattam, which gave a peek into her career in her life with the biographical narrations by her niece. And she created another record for herself by earning her PhD in dance, and that is the first in India in 1977. So protecting the power of the little man, or we can say the common man in a democracy. So the nation may have celebrated Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav on completion of 75 years of independence and the 74th anniversary of founding of the republic, but there are still deep contradictions in the country, and there is abject poverty that prevails, and there is a deepening divide between the rich and poor. So we are seeing the economic inequality between them growing. There's precarious conditions that affects the rule of law, and not so good governance possesses grave challenges to the very existence of democracy and Republic of India. So the nation stands polarized on religious and caste lines, resulting in the creation of deep distrust, if not animosity, and the party in power at the center is unwilling to cede an inch to the opposition to maintain a vibrant democracy. And with weakened constitutional safeguards and institutions, the judiciary, including the Supreme Court of India, has been slow to stop these attacks. For example, the floor test that the judiciary applies only seems to aid the efforts of the ruling party in bringing down the opposition governments and is a collectively futile judicial weapon. So judiciary needs to innovate to stop the luring of elected MLAs in order to protect the power of the little man in a democracy, as Sir Winston Churchill described it. So, the real challenge before the nation is how to make citizens, now bystanders, aware of their duties to defend the Constitution. Now, the focus is shifting towards making people aware of the fundamental duties, because earlier we were focusing that everyone should be aware of their right, but at the same time, they also have certain duties and obligations towards the state and also towards other fellow citizens. So, constitutionally, the republic that was envisioned by the framers was that George Crott, the historian, had described. B.R. Ambedkar quotes him reverentially, enforcing basically a paramount reverence for the forms of constitution, enforcing obedience to authority acting under and within these forms, yet combined with a habit of open speech, of action subject only to definite the legal control and unrestrained censure of those very authorities as to all their public acts, combined too with a perfect confidence in the bosom of every citizen amidst the bitterness of the party contest that forms the constitution will not be less sacred in the eyes of his opponents than in his own. So, the failure of the constitutional and administrative authorities to work as per the letter and spirit of the Constitution shows how undemocratic India is. In discussing the importance of the opposition members of the Constituent Assembly, basically that included ZH Lurie, and he says that everyone knows that the power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And it is also a truism to say that every party that comes into power tries to make its hold permanent. Then we have T.T. Krishnamachari. He said that I have no doubt the future parliament and those who are going to be in charge of the destinies of this country, they would bear in mind the suggestion of Mr. Larry to pay a salary to the leader of opposition if that would encourage the creation of an opposition, of a healthy opposition party. So the role of opposition here, you should be knowing about how and basically how they can perform their role in a democracy, how they can act as a catalyst in strengthening democracy, and why do we actually need a strong opposition. So the failure to have a strong and healthy opposition is causing the ruling party to perpetuate its position in a dictatorial manner, and constant attacks on the Supreme Court of India by ministers and others show the scant regard for a healthy democracy. So the ruling party must remember what Ram Narayan Singh once said, that in this country we have just got freedom and our own party, that is Congress party, has got no opposition to it. I have seen how things have been going on here, and I feel that there must be a strong opposition to criticize our actions and review them. And government which does not like opposition and always wants to be in power is not a patriotic but a traitor government. So let us hope and pray that the party in power and the opposition will realize their duties and responsibilities towards the Constitution, respect the wishes of the framers of the Constitution, and work for the welfare of the people of India. So talking about the Russia-Ukraine war, so it seems that the war is endless as of now, and talks are the only way out. So as Russia's war in Ukraine enters its second year, there are no signs of any side relenting. And Moscow has mobilized some 5 lakh troops, more than twice the size of the forces it deployed to launch the invasion last February for a widely expected a spring offensive. So we are just seeing that the war is escalating, and we seen that it is, as of now, it seems endless to us. And as of now, no side is ready for talks, and Mr. Putin is ready to fight as long as it takes, and the West is ready to arm the Ukraine as long as it takes. So there's no crunch of weapons and financial aid. Further, if the war prolongs, the risk of a Russia-NATO direct conflict, that would also be higher, because right now, when we talk about the NATO countries, so they are not directly participating in this war. Indirectly, they are basically, as of now, we can say that it's a proxy war going between Russia and the Western countries or the NATO countries, because the NATO countries, as of now, they are supporting Ukraine in every possible manner. And right now, they are not a direct participant in this war. So it is have this one of the major risk that if it escalates further, so we might see that NATO might also be included in this war. So the rapid destruction of security in Europe and the deepening mistrust between the major powers is comparable with the pre-First World War situation in the continent. So wars typically come to an end either through outright victories or through talks. So these are the only two ways. And the first year of the war suggests that the first option is unrealistic for the either side, which means that Russia, Ukraine, and the West, they should prepare for an eventual settlement. And the earlier they begin talking to each other, the better it would be for the whole world. So India can become a biodiversity champion. So the sum and the variation of our biological wealth, known as the biodiversity, is essential to the future of this planet, and the importance of our planet's biodiversity was strongly articulated at the United Nations Biodiversity Conference in Montreal, Canada. And in 2022, 188 country representatives, they adopted an agreement to halt and reverse biodiversity laws by conserving 30% of the world's land, 30% of the world's oceans by 2030. And this is known as the 30 by 30 pledge. So India currently hosts 17% of the planet's human population, 17% of the global area and biodiversity hotspots, placing it at the helm to guide the planet in becoming biodiversity champions. So programs with potential. So in response to this call, this year's union budget it mentioned green growth as one of the 7 priorities of the Saptarishis, and the emphasis on the green growth is welcome news for India's biological wealth as the country is facing serious losses of natural assets such as soil, land, water, and biodiversity. Then we have the National Mission for a Green India, which aims to increase the forest cover on the degraded lands and protecting the existing forested lands. Then next up, we have the Green Credit Program, that is the objective to incentivize environmentally sustainable and responsive actions by companies, individuals, and the local bodies. Then we have the Mishti program that was recently launched in this year's budget, which is there for the mangrove conservation. And here you can have a look what Mishti stands for. So it is particularly significant because of the extraordinary importance of the mangroves and the coastal ecosystems in mitigating the climate change. And we've also discussed in detail about this program and also about the importance of mangroves and like the habitat that is important for them, the climate which is important for their growth. Then we have PM Pranam program, which stands for Prime Minister's Program for Restoration, Awareness, Nourishment, and Amelioration of the Mother Earth. So that is for reducing the inputs of the synthetic fertilizers and pesticides is critical for sustaining our agriculture. Finally, we have the Amrit Dharohar scheme. Directly, it mentions our biological wealth and is expected to encourage optimal use of wetlands and enhance biodiversity, carbon stock, ecotourism opportunities, and income generation for the local communities. So this must be science-based. So it is critical that these programs respond to the current state of the country's biodiversity with evidence-based implementation. So a science-based and inclusive monitoring program is critical not only for the success of these efforts, but also for documentation and distillation of lessons learned for replication nationally and as well as globally. So the future of our wetland ecosystems will depend on how we are able to sustain ecological flows through reduction in water use in key sectors such as agriculture by encouraging changes to less water-intensive crops such as millets, as well as investments in water recycling in urban areas using a combination of gray and blue-green infrastructure. Then local community involvement is very important. Finally, each of these efforts, they must be inclusive of the local and the nomadic communities where these initiatives will be implemented. So participation of obviously civil society and their role becomes important. So traditional knowledge and the practices of these communities should be integrated into the implementation plans. And each of these programs has the potential to greatly improve the state of our nation's biodiversity if their implementation is based on the latest scientific and ecological knowledge. Then we have PM STIAC, which is Prime Minister Science, Technology and Innovation Advisory Council. So this will be immediately launched by the government. That is it would be launching the National Mission on Biodiversity and Human Well-being that is already been approved by this council. And this mission seeks to harness the power of the interdisciplinary knowledge for greening India and its economy to restore and enrich our natural capital for the well-being of our people and to position India as a global leader in applied biodiversity science. So how satisfied are people with the health services? So satisfaction levels, they vary across the social, economic, and geographic characteristics. And when we have a look at the data, so the overall healthcare system, fully satisfied is 37. So I hope these are in percentage form. Yes, so all these are in percentage form, and the treatment in the hospital last visited, so 48% people are satisfied with that. And then we have, when we talk about the overall healthcare system, so 42% of the people are somewhat satisfied, 10% are somewhat dissatisfied, then fully dissatisfied includes 7%. So obviously we know about that when we talk about the total health expenditure as a percentage of GDP, so that for that government has a target of 2.5%, and we are around 1% short of that. So satisfaction with the public services can influence the political outcomes, and low satisfaction can sometimes be a catalyst for a change. So do voters really care about health or not? So most important issues to develop the local area is 31% of the people feel that it is jobs, then 17% people say it's schools, and then 17% say that it is health. Then the biggest concerns over the next 5 years for the people is that 37% of the people feel that it is employment, 26% feel it is education, then followed by 20% feel that it is health. So health as an electoral issue. So when we talk about national elections, so 25% of the people feel that it is an electoral issue to great extent. Then at assembly elections, it is 22%, and 27% of the people at local elections. During local elections, they feel that it is an important electoral issue to great extent. So the foreign investment, it declined from $43 billion to $36.75 billion. So FDI inflows, they stood at this much level, and the FDI inflows, they include equity and reinvested earnings and the other capital. So China approves loan for Pakistan to help avoid the financial crisis. So $700 million is a loan that has been provided and sanctioned by China for Pakistan. So the two countries, they are getting more engaged, and we also have the China-Pakistan economic corridor. That is an issue for India because that passes through basically it violates our sovereignty. And 212 individuals, they have been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize of 2023. So this is the lowest number in 4 years, and overall, over the last 8 years, the number of annual candidates that had exceeded 300 mark. So the significance of the findings in Kidali. So what are the different artifacts which have been unearthed from the excavations in Kidali? So how does it shed light on the Sangam age, and why did the transfer of superintending archaeologist Amarnath Ramakrishna create a controversy? And are there links to the Indus Valley civilization or not? So this is an extremely important article. And these are, you can see the carnelian beads in this picture that have been unearthed, and they're offering pot at the Kidali Kondagai site, which is there in Tamil Nadu in 2022. So how is this site linked to the Sangam age? The Sangam age is a period of history in ancient Tamil Nadu, which was believed to be from the 3rd century BCE to 3rd century CE, and the name is derived from the renowned Sangam poets of the Madurai from that time. Excavations by ASI and the Tamil Nadu State Archaeology Department, it has pushed the Sangam age further back. And in 2019, the report dated the unearthed artifacts from Kidali to a period between 6th century BCE and the 1st century BCE. So that is, they say that this is the actual time period of the Sangam age. And Kidali could also provide crucial evidence for understanding the missing links of the Iron Age, which was there between 12th century BCE to 6th century BCE, and to the early historic period that was spanning between 6th century BCE to 4th century BCE, and the subsequent cultural developments also. So what was the controversy surrounding Kidali? So after reports of the possible links with the Indus Valley civilization, the third round of 2017 of diggings by the Archaeological Survey of India, it saw a delayed start. Then superintending archaeologist, he was transferred to Assam, allegedly in a perceived attempt to play down the excavation findings, and Kidali almost faded from public memory as there was no significant findings in the third round. So this led to criticism that the excavation had been deliberately restricted to 400 meters, and Tamil Nadu politicians, they criticized the BJP-led union government of trying to suppress the information about an ancient Tamil civilization that had flourished on the banks of the Vegai River. On the intervention of the Madurai bench of the Madras High Court, the ASI permitted the Tamil Nadu department to take up further excavation on its own. So this was basically this issue also became political in nature. So are there any links to the Indus Valley civilization or not from the excavations? So the unearthed Kidali artifacts, they have led academics to describe the site as part of the Vega Valley civilization. And the findings, they have also invited comparison with the Indus Valley civilization while acknowledging the cultural gap of 1000 years between the two places. So till now, the gap is filled with the Iron Age materials in South India, which serve as residual links. However, some of the symbols found in the potsherds of Kidali bear a close resemblance to Indus Valley signs. So that is one similarity or possible similarity between the two civilizations. Then it has also been affirmed that Kidali has all the characteristics of an urban civilization with brick structures, luxury items, and proof of internal and external trade. It comes across as an industrious and advanced civilization and has given evidence of urban life and settlements in Tamil Nadu during the early historic period. So, Kidali is also added to the credibility of Sangam literature. So we have found gold ornaments, copper articles, semi-precious stones, and shell bangles, ivory combs. They reflect the artistic, culturally rich, and prosperous life of the Kidali people. Then we have agate and carnelian beads. They suggest imports through the commercial networks, while terracotta and ivory dice, gamesmen, and evidence of the hopscotch have been unearthed, revealing their pastime hobbies. So one of the territory of disputes, that is Burkina Faso. So recently, French troops they have withdrawn from here. So how successful was the Paris operation in taking back regions from the Islamist groups in the Sahel region? So you need to spot this region on your maps. And on February 19, Burkina Faso announced an official end to the operations led by France in the country. So France had signed a military agreement with Burkina Faso in 2018 to achieve stability against the threat of the Islamist militant groups. France signed a series of similar agreements with other West African nations. So Burkina Faso is a West African nation, and even the Sahel region is there in the western part of the African continent. So why is France withdrawing? So for Paris, the military agreements in the West Africa, they pose multiple challenges, and the French President Emmanuel Macron said that victory against terror is not possible if it's not supported by the state itself. So France has also been critical of the Russian inroads into Africa. It has accused the Russian private military company, the Wagner Group, for working closely with the military governments in West Africa. So that's why France has withdrawn. And why did Burkina Faso end it? So France was asked to withdraw its troops from Burkina Faso months after it pulled out its troops from Mali, and the primary reason behind the withdrawal is the failure of its counterinsurgency operations in the Sahel region against the Islamist groups. Then, secondly, as Islamist insurgency, it kept intensifying. France's military presence in Burkina Faso came under scrutiny after the second coup in September 2022. Anti-France protests increased in Burkina Faso with demonstrators demanding French withdrawal from the country. So there was also an increasing pro-Russian sentiment of the people. And finally, the ruling military junta of Burkina Faso was looking beyond its traditional allies for support in its counter-insurgency campaigns. So there was dissatisfaction with the French approach, and actors like Russia and China, they are more preferable partners to fight insurgency. That's what people believe. So we are again seeing the rising role of China even in African continent, and even Russia is also making inroads into this region. So is there Russian involvement? So Russian engagements in Africa, they have been under scrutiny for a few years, especially after the resurgence of military governments in West Africa since 2020, following the Guangdou's announcement of the termination of the French operations. Burkina Prime Minister termed Russia a reasonable choice. But simultaneously, Moscow has been courting the African countries, and in 2023 alone, the Russian foreign minister visited 7 times in Africa in different countries. So, what Next, for France and Burkina Faso. So Paris has accepted the military government's decision, which marks a significant change in its West Africa approach. And in Burkina Faso, in the absence of the France troops, the alleged Russian mercenaries, they may fill this security void as part of its bid to enhance the military engagements in the continent. So the new developments are unlikely to address the insurgency and the consequent insecurity. So Ahmedabad is a city which has seen the best of times and the worst of times. So from being a Manchester of the East, due to its textile mills, Ahmedabad became a center of new awakening, standing for symbols like Charkha, Khadi, and Sabarmati Ashram, and most of all, Gandhi. So the city of Sultan Ahmad Shah, it has undergone so many transformation as to make infinity intelligible. It has been amongst the best of cities, survived the worst of calamities. Founded by Shah in 1411 on the banks of Sabarmati River, there are different tales about the foundation of Ahmedabad. So there's a book which is titled Ahmedabad, a City in the World. So when the Timur Lane launched an attack on Delhi, the governor of Gujarat was Muzaffar Shah, the son of Punjabi Hindu converted to Islam. And in 1407, in uncertain conditions created by the attack on Delhi, Muzaffar was persuaded to proclaim himself as the Sultan of Gujarat. So it's a heaven for craftsmen. So Shah it founded the city close to two trading centers of Karnavati and Asawal. So assuring the business as the new city connected business caravans from the north, west, and south. So among those to gain were the weavers, merchants, and the craftsmen. So the reason being the decline of the Gujarat Sultanate and the arrival of Portuguese. However, Mughal Emperor Akbar wrested the city in 1572, and Ahmedabad began to look up again, only to decline shortly afterwards. Its decline being tied to the fall of the Mughals. So it has been like seeing different trends and performed differently. So very important information given in this article. So when we talk about peace and rights, so then came an Indian from South Africa who was to turn such loop-sided notions on their head so one could go anywhere in the world and retain the purity of spirit and body. So we're talking about Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. The image of Ahmedabad changed with the coming of him. So it wasn't any longer the Shah's city. So the city resonated with Mahatma's name, his spirit, his Sabarmati ashram, and as Yagnik and Seth they write, with the setting up of his Sabarmati ashram, the great manufacturing center also became a center for new awakening. So it became the political hub of India, radiating the message of freedom struggle based on truth and non-violence. So during the first half of the 20th century, the ashram was like a pilgrimage center. Nobody talked of the city's institutes of higher learning, its textile mills, its skilled craftsmen, or even the medieval monuments. So the Charkha, the Khadi, the Ashram, and the Gandhi, Ahmedabad stood for them all. But then Gandhi was assassinated in Delhi shortly after the independence, and Ahmedabad was not to know another angel of peace for the next 70 odd years. So the city it hurtled from one communal right to another. Soon there came a time when religion became a marker of existence. So as So even like there have been changes in the name of the city. So in 2010, the Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation began calling itself as the Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation. So the shift to vernacular Gujarat was intended to rid the city of its Islamic association. So the city today is reorganized on the principle of single community areas where no intercommunity mixing is possible. So the road behind the Muslim ghetto and the Hindu residential area is called in popular parlance the border. And the city where lakhs have been known to worship Krishna since the 12th century could do with some Allah also. So Shah's Ahmedabad has moved miles from Gandhi's all-embracing Ram Rajya. So we are having talks, in-person border talks after 3 years with China. And we discussed the proposals for disengagement in the two remaining friction areas along the line of actual control to create conditions that will restore normalcy in the relations. So it is such a stark thing that Nagaland, till now, it has not had even a single woman MLA in the state. So party in they insist that they are investing in winnability of the women candidates for the Feb 27 election rather than merely going in for the optics. So Dickinsonia fossil found in Bhimbetka, it is an old beehive. So the fossil is that of an old beehive in Bhimbetka. So the fossils of an extinct species of animal that scientists reported in a sensational discovery from India's Bhimbetka rock shelters in 2021 have been found to be bellied hawks. So the fossil believed to be of Dickinsonia found at the Bhimbetka rock shelters near Bhopal in 2021. This, as you can see in the picture. Now this finding, it has been overturned, and it is saying that it is not a Dickinsonia fossil, it is an old beehive. So we are talking about the mental well-being of even pilots and the cabin crew. So the Directorate General of Civil Aviation has ordered all the airlines, the flying training organizations, as well as the Airports Authority of India to take measures to promote the mental well-being of pilots, cabin crew, and air traffic controllers to enable peer support and self-declaration and referral in a non-stigmatizing and non-punitive environment, and provide coping mechanism to ensure return to duty of those suffering from issues such as anxiety and depression. So mental health is also becoming a concern in diverse areas. So Biden meets Eastern NATO allies after Putin's nuclear warning. So as we say that this war is just escalating as of now, and it seems endless to us. So rupee trade is facing friction as banks are wary of the US sanctions, and RBI had set up the International Trade Settlement Mechanism in rupee last year to facilitate trade with countries under sanctions such as Russia. So EEPC chairman urges RBI banks to work together to make the settlement process seamless. So yesterday only we talked in detail about the Vostro accounts and how do they function and their importance. So we talked in detail about them. But right now we are seeing that things are not moving as per desired. Policy complacent about the growth and economy may pay a high price. So in the second half of the 2021-22 monetary policy was complacent about inflation. So two external members of the Reserve Bank of India's Monetary Policy Committee, who had voted against the majority decision to raise the policy interest rate by 25 basis points earlier this month, they expressed misgivings about the impact that the policy approach could have on growth. And obviously if we'll be like going ahead with increasing the repo rate, that is going to impact the growth also, but at the same time it is important for us to control the inflation from increasing further. So even Wikipedia has alleged leveled some allegations against Adani. So the stocks, they fall further 10%. So cotton output is likely to rise by 8%. So here for us, it is important to know which all states are important cotton growers in India. So SEBI says that there's an urgent need to raise the self-governance level. So we see that as the cost of compliance and non-compliance that has gone up substantially as people prefer to fight it out than reach a settlement. So it is important that we raise the level of self-governance. So the only way out is to increase self-governance level. So rising heat likely to impact the wheat output, and this year also because of the changed rainfall patterns, the domestic production of wheat has been impacted, so which is causing the cereal inflation. And apart from that, there is Russia-Ukraine war, which has also led to increase in the wheat prices. And this year also we expect that heat is going to increase. So even because of that, the output would be impacted. So the concerns they still remain. So we need to come up with a solution to deal with this thing. So coming to Financial Express. So we are seeing our capital market is falling. Here you can see a graph of Sensex, how it has declined by 1.5%. And SEBI plans to allow perpetual funds, so the option to redeem the portions at certain intervals would be available. So here, perpetual funds is what is important for us to know. So it is also deliberating on allowing the permanent capital vehicles, evergreen or the perpetual funds, where the capital available is managed for an unlimited period of time into India. So these funds can potentially exist for perpetuity, and they are aimed at long-term investors such as pension funds and insurance firms, which do not want the return of capital, but they want regular incomes. So the funds, they could be structured in a way to give investors an option to redeem a certain portion of their investment after a 5, 10, or 10-year lock-in period. And several alternative investment funds in India have been facing an issue with the fund extensions, and they have been unable to liquidate their investments within the given life cycle of the fund, which is typically 8 to 12 years. So with India rapidly coming up the learning curve on the private investment funds, it may be the best time to introduce these PCVs in India. So unlike the traditional funds which have a finite tenure, the perpetuity funds, they can have an open term with respect to the tenure, and they don't have a sunset period. So even like these can be of various types, including the limited partnerships traded publicly on an exchange. They can be in the form of real estate investment trust, closed-ended funds, interval funds, and variable funds such as the annuities and life insurance. So disinflation path is likely to be protracted. Coming from RBI governor, he says the process to bringing down the inflation is likely to be a protracted process on account of stickiness in the core inflation, even as estimates suggest that the headline inflation is likely to moderate in the coming financial year. And so the main problem is the sticky core inflation. So we are expecting that headline inflation might come down, but the main problem is the sticky core inflation. So talking about the horticulture sector is gradually turning into an organized industry linked to seed trading, value addition, and the exports. So we are basically even developing our horticultural sector. So you can find out more about it, then stay the course on the monetary tightening coming from IMF chiefs, the like laying down the policy priorities, reining in inflation. Obviously, the central banks they have been adopting the tight monetary policy. So like before few months we were seeing that there were aggressive rate hikes, but even that thing has been reduced. But she says that policymakers needs to stay the course on the monetary tightening. Aligning the fiscal and the monetary policies will help. So just completely relying upon the tight monetary policy would be hampering the growth. So she's saying that it is important to align both the fiscal and the monetary policies. And clear communication of these policy goals is vital to avoid a sudden repricing in the financial markets also. So here it is like inflation expectations play an important role. So we are expecting that sugar output may decline by 7%. So government may not allow the exports beyond an approved limit of 6 million tons. So inflation in sugar. So we are like two main things when we talk about cereal inflation. One is the wheat prices, and then the sugar front that we are seeing. Prices might increase. So there's a need to address poverty where India accounts for the highest number of poor people globally. So millions cannot afford fuels for heating or cooking. In successive shocks, they have increased poverty, jeopardizing decades of progress. Talking about the cause for worry, so India's exports to China declined in financial year 2023, while our imports have increased from China. And while some attribute this to China's COVID crisis, the country's imports in 2022 broke the record set the year before. So as I was just saying that the imports they have increased and the exports to China have decreased. So that is a concern at the export front, and obviously because of the global economic slowdown that we're expecting, the export sector is under stress. So one of the feature of India's exports this financial year is that commodity dependent sectors they have benefited from the hardening of the prices in the global markets, and these will be particularly vulnerable when the anticipated downturn in the global economy that sets in. So the role of government becomes obviously very important in such scenarios, and we have been having bilateral trade agreements with countries that can also help in increasing our export sector's growth. Apart from that, I've been reiterating this thing that we can increase, like we cover the stop this particular point in detail, that we have opportunities when we talk about trading with the Southeast Asian economies. So, talking about education lessons from the state of Andhra Pradesh. So, from the direct benefit transfers for the poor households to investing in school infrastructure, the state is doing many things right. So, education is the most powerful weapon you can use to change this world, believed by Nelson Mandela. So, this mantra is now being put into practice by Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister Jagan Mohan Reddy, who understands how important it is to invest in the human capital. So here the demographic dividend also comes in. So this can be done by building the right foundation through education. And the government has earmarked around rupees 30,000 crores a year. That is somewhere around 12% of the state budget for the education. And the reforms are game changers, like starting with the Amma Vodi, which is the initiative that provides financial assistance of rupees 15,000 rupees to poor and needy mothers if they send their children, that is between class 1 to intermediate level, to the schools. So this is one financial incentive that has been provided if if you're sending your children to school. So far the government has credited around rupees 19,000 crores directly in the last 3.5 years. And the primary objective of the scheme is to ensure that no mother is deprived of sending her children to school due to poverty. And this scheme has been instrumental in promoting the enrollment and retention in the government schools, particularly among the girls. And the results have been outstanding, with a 25% decrease in the dropout rate in the last 2 years only. And there is also this Videshi Vidya Divina scheme, which provides financial assistance to students who cannot afford to pursue higher education abroad. So even like they have been providing financial assistance in case of higher education, if you want to pursue it from the foreign countries. And because of This scheme, the number of students pursuing higher education abroad, that has jumped by a whooping 50% in the last 2 years. And another reform is the Manbadi Nadu Nedu, which aims to upgrade the infrastructure and the facilities in the government schools to bring them on par with the private schools. So at the infrastructure front, also they have been taking steps, and the main thing like that has turned out to be beneficial is the financial incentives for higher education abroad and to the mothers who've been sending their children to school. So coming to Indian Express, like we have covered all these topics. So the LCA Tejas Mark II can carry 8 BBR missiles, and it can integrate the French and the Russian weapons also. So no other single engine aircraft of this class can carry 8 BBR missiles. So BBR is the beyond visual range missiles, and so this is very important for our defense sector. And then we have SCALP, which is an air to ground long range deep strike missile. It is SCALP. And apart from that, we have weapons like Astra, which is then beyond visual range air to air missile. We have been like having other important weapons also, which have been designed by and manufactured by the Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. So light combat aircraft, Tejas we've been talking about, which is an indigenous aircraft developed by India. Coming to the editorial page, food is the moral right of all who are born into this world. Coming from Norman Borlaug, so he's an important personality associated with Green Revolution in India. And here we've been talking about the data bill. So giving data its due, National Data and Analytics Platform helps the policymakers, researchers exploit the potential of official data. So public data is often stored on platforms that are difficult to use and in formats that delay the analysis. Data from different sources do not speak to each other, meaning users cannot compare the data from different departments or the data that is gathered over time. Finally, because of the slow updating processes and inconsistencies in data quality, it is not always clear that the appropriate data is publicly available. So, to address these challenges, every step of the NDAP design process includes rigorous user testing to ensure that the platform precisely it solves these issues. And we've been having the National Data Protection Bill also. So data is the new oil, and it has almost become a cliche that the world's ability to generate data is now increasing exponentially. Collecting and storing data is just the first step in realizing its potential. And Niti Aayog in 2022, in collaboration with the ministries and the state governments, endeavored to fill this need by launching a transformational open data platform, which is called the National Data and Analytics Platform. So it is important for you to remember that it has been developed by Niti Aayog. So we have been we've talked about what are the issues that it would be solving. So new seed varieties will be needed to battle the climate change. Latest wheat variety from the Indian Agricultural Research Institute is beginning. So with the both maximum and the minimum temperatures at 3 to 5 degrees Celsius above the normal in most of the country's wheat growing areas, there is a concern of the crop currently in farmers' fields and due for harvesting only in April. So this is understandable given last year's mercury spike after mid-March that signed uh, the crop when it was in the final stages of the grain formation and filling. So this time heat conditions they are prevailing from mid-February itself, and when the wheat was hardly entered the flowering and the heading period which precedes the kernel development. So if temperature it continues to increase, the grains will not have the time to accumulate sufficient starch and proteins. So climate change is obviously impacting the food production, and the food security becomes a concern. So recently, the Indian Agricultural Research Institute it has developed a variety which is named HD3385, which is suitable for sowing in the second half of October as against the usual time from early to late November. So this new seed variety it can be sown during the second half of October so that the wheat crop is saved from the heat. And the good thing is that the institute has licensed the new variety to a private company for seed multiplication and commercialization, and it should help in faster lab to land adoption even while fully protecting its intellectual property rights. So sowing wheat in October would, of course, it would be presenting a challenge in Punjab and Haryana, where farmers they have a short window after harvesting of paddy. So they resort to burning of the stubble in order to sow wheat even in November. So if the new varieties would be sowed during mid-October, so we'll be having this problem of stubble burning. Right now also it is a problem. But if there are demonstrable benefits from the early sowing such varieties, they may actually induce the farmers to cultivate wheat. And we have to then again find a solution. We need a permanent solution and a sustainable solution for even stubble burning issue. While this is welcome, it's equally clear that agricultural scientists, they have a lot of work ahead. So at the core of it will be breeding for the climate change. So Rawalpindi's decline should encourage Delhi to adopt an oceanic security strategy. So human beings should never gloat over the misery of others, even if the victims belong to what is called an enemy state. So we are seeing that in Pakistan, we've been talking about how the economy has been deteriorating, and there is rise of even the terrorist activities by Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan there. So we have now rightly created a serious and integrated staff with some of the best strategic brains in the country. And logically, they are also hamstring in getting on with their task without a national security strategy. So we need a national security strategy and obviously need a national security council as well. So India is screaming for a change in the strategic military direction to an oceanic strategy. Let our strategic thinking come out of the 20th century and face the new century with fresh minds. Who knows? And Pakistan and India may not be fated where the perpetual enemies racked as they both are by terrorism. So, what is a corrupt practice under the Representation of the People's Act and what the Supreme Court has said? So, cases in Supreme Court and the Allahabad High Courts in the matter of the Anurag Narayan Singh versus the Harshvardhan Bajpai, a bench of the justices of the Supreme Court, they declined to interfere in a 2017 order of the Allahabad High Court, which had dismissed a petition challenging the election of a BJP MLA in UP So all these are different Supreme Court judgments. You can have a look. So understanding what are the corrupt practices. So under Section 123 of the Representation of the People's Act, corrupt practices includes bribery, undue influence, false information, and promotion or attempted promotion of the feelings of enmity or hatred by a candidate. So this section of the Act defines undue influence as any direct or indirect interference or attempt to interfere with the free exercise of any electoral right. An elected representative can be disqualified if convicted of certain offenses on grounds of corrupt practices, for failing to declare the election expenses, or for even interest in the government contracts or the works. So the higher pension option, the EPFO subscribers, they can now opt for a higher pension. They can ask for 8.33% deduction on actual basic salary. Details of the method of the deposit and the computation of the pensions, etc. They are still awaited as of now. So what is a pension structure that exists currently? See, the Employees Provident Funds and the Miscellaneous Provisions Act of 1952, it did not provide for a pension scheme. The EPS administered by the EPFO, it came into being in 1995. So the pension fund was to comprise a deposit of 8.33% of the employer's contribution towards the Provident Fund corpus. Both the employees and the employers, they contribute 12% of the employee's basic salary, dearness allowance and retaining allowance, if any, to the EPF, and the employee's entire contribution goes to EPF, while the 12% contribution by the employers is split as 3.67% to EPF and 8.33% to EPS. So the government of India contributes 1.16% of an employee's pension, and employees do not contribute to the pension scheme. So at the time of introduction of the EPS, the maximum pensionable salary was rupees 5,000 per month, and this was subsequently raised to rupees 6,500 and then to rupees 15,000. So the pension contribution currently is 8.33% of rupees 15,000, that is rupees 1,250, unless the employee and the employer, they have opted to contribute at the actual basic salary exceeding the pensionable salary. So who gets pension under the EPS and how much is the pension amount? So EPS, it provides employees with the pension after the age of 58 years if they have rendered at least 10 years of service and retired at the age 58. So if a member leaves employment between ages 50 to 57, they can avail early pension, but that is reduced. So the monthly pension is computed according to the formula, that is, the monthly pension is equal to pensionable salary multiplied by the pensionable service divided by 70, and this is based on the pro rata basis linked to the maximum monthly pension. So this like it is technical, so you don't have to go into that. So there were some amendments in the EPS in 2014. So that raised the pensionable salary cap to rupees 15,000 a month from rupees 6,500, and it allowed the members along with their employers to contribute 8.33% on their actual salaries towards EPS. So what did the Supreme Court say in its November 2022 judgment? So 54 writ petitions were filed by employees from both exempt and unexempted establishments asking for the amendments to be struck down. So the employees, they cited the lack of information and awareness about the time window to opt for the amended pension scheme linked to the higher pensionable salary, and a three-judge bench of the Supreme Court, it upheld the 2014 amendments, but it extended the time to opt for the new scheme by 4 months. So the operation of the amendment requiring the members to make 1.16% of contribution was suspended by the court for 6 months. So some relief and an extension by the Supreme Court for subscribing to this new scheme. And so you can have a look at the circular that has been issued by EPFO. So Seattle, which is there in United States of America, it bans the caste discrimination. So what is the law and what is its significance? So Seattle, it became the first US city to outlaw the caste discrimination after its local council voted to add the caste to the city's anti-discrimination laws. So, what did the resolution say? According to a news release by the Seattle City Council, the legislation banning caste discrimination will prohibit the businesses from discriminating based on caste with respect to hiring, the tenure, the promotion, workplace conditions, or the wages. And it will ban discrimination based on caste in places of public accommodation, such as hotels, public transportation, public restrooms, or the retail establishments. So the law will also prohibit housing discrimination based on caste in rental housing leases, property sales, and the mortgage loans. So, what led Seattle to bring this law? The US is the second most popular destination for Indians living abroad, according to the Migration Policy Institute, which estimates the US diaspora grew from about 206,000 in 1980 to about 2.7 million in 2021. So, according to a 2016 survey by Equality Labs, all of the inequalities associated with the caste status they have been embedded in all of the major South Asian American institutions, and they extend into mainstream American institutions which have significant South Asian immigration populations. So the people migrating to US specifically from South Asia, they have to face such discrimination there. So it is important for them, for obviously the Indian diaspora, which is there in US. So the stock market is falling on the worries of more rate hikes coming in future, because we are not seeing that inflation is coming down. However, we saw that it started moderating after October 2022, but again in January 2023, we saw that it crossed the retail inflation crossed the 6% level of mark. So inflation is still a concern for us. So data centers is the new investment opportunity in India. And workers with advanced digital skills, they boost India's GDP by $507 billion. So what are the advanced digital skills? So this includes the cloud architecture or maintenance, software or application development, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. So these are the new emerging technologies we can talk about and which more people are focusing upon and moving towards. So our FDI inflows has also declined. We have talked about this. So that's all for today. Thank you for joining in, Sarkari. I hope you have understood all the topics. You'll be getting the PDF link in the description box, and do not forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and share the video as much as possible. Thank you so much for joining us today.